3,000 years before Napoleon Hill sat across from Andrew Carnegie and asked him to reveal the secret to wealth, before Think and Grow Rich was ever written, before anyone alive today drew their first breath, a shepherd king in ancient Israel picked up a pen and wrote 6 verses. Just 6. 23 lines in some translations. And buried inside those lines is every single principle Hill would spend 20 years of his life uncovering. That shepherd was David. Those 6 verses are Psalm 23, and you have almost certainly read them dozens of times without once understanding what they actually say. Because here is what no one tells you. Psalm 23 is not a prayer of comfort. It is not something written for funerals and hospital rooms. It is the oldest wealth program ever recorded. Every verse, every line. It maps directly to a principle that Napoleon Hill identified after interviewing over 500 of the most successful human beings who ever lived. David wrote the blueprint. Hill wrote the instruction manual. And the reason your affirmations have not been working, the reason you pray for abundance and wake up to the same bank balance, the reason faith feels like something you perform instead of something you possess, is because you have been reading the most powerful wealth scripture in human history and treating it like a lullaby. That changes today. And I do not say that lightly. I say it because I have lived on both sides of this psalm. The side where you read it and feel nothing change, and the side where you recite it and everything shifts. But before I show you how each verse of Psalm 23 maps to Hill's principles, and I need to name something you are carrying right now. Because if I get this wrong, nothing else in this video will matter. And if I get it right, you will know that what follows is meant for you. You have tried. That is the part no one acknowledges. You have prayed for abundance. You have written your goals in a journal. You have said your affirmations in the morning, stood in front of a mirror, and told yourself that you are worthy of wealth, that you believe in abundance, that your life is changing. And then you put down the journal and picked up your phone and checked your bank account. And the number on the screen did not care what you whispered to the mirror. It sat there, unmoved, like a wall, and something inside you tightened. Not anger exactly, something worse. Doubt. The quiet, sinking kind that does not announce itself. Wow, it just settles in your chest like fog and whispers. Who are you kidding? Maybe you went to church last Sunday and someone stood up and gave a testimony about financial breakthrough, and you clapped and said, "Amen," and meant it for them, but thought to yourself, why not me? I have been faithful. I have been patient. I have read the books. What am I doing wrong? Here is the truth. You are not doing anything wrong. You were never given the real instructions. You were told to believe, and you shall receive. But no one explained to you how belief actually operates. No one told you that belief is not a feeling you force into existence by squeezing your eyes shut and thinking positive thoughts. Hill spent 20 years interviewing Carnegie, Edison, Ford, Rockefeller, Wrigley, Schwab, Bell. 500 people who built empires from nothing. And what he found was not a collection of business strategies. It was a single mechanism, a law, the same law operating in every one of them, whether they could articulate it or not. And that law has everything to do with a psalm you already know by heart. When Napoleon Hill sat across from Andrew Carnegie in 1908, Carnegie was the wealthiest man alive. He had built the largest steel empire the world had ever seen. And when Hill asked him to reveal the secret to wealth, Carnegie did not talk about markets. He did not talk about timing or connections or luck. He said something that sounded almost religious. He said that wealth begins as a state of mind, that the mind must be conditioned for abundance before abundance can appear in your life. Hill was confused. He had expected a formula, but what he received was a spiritual principle disguised as business advice. Carnegie told Hill something else that most people gloss over. He said the secret to which I refer has been mentioned no fewer than 100 times throughout this book. It has not been directly named, for it seems to work more successfully when it is merely uncovered and left in sight. Carnegie was not being coy. He understood that the secret works through the subconscious, and the subconscious absorbs what it discovers, not what it is told. That is why Psalm 23 works. It does not lecture you about abundance. It lets you walk through abundance. It lets you discover it in the green pastures and the still waters. Carnegie would have recognized David's method instantly. Carnegie then made Hill an extraordinary offer. He would introduce Hill to the most powerful people in America, give him access to every self-made fortune he could find on one condition. Hill had to dedicate 20 years of his life to identifying the exact mechanism that creates wealth, not the external strategies, the internal one, the thing that happens inside a person before the money appears. Hill accepted, and for 2 decades he studied. He listened. He documented. And what emerged from those 20 years became Think and Grow Rich, the most influential success book ever published. In that book, Hill identified 13 principles of wealth, and the one he placed second, right after desire, the one he called the connecting link between the conscious mind and infinite intelligence, was faith. Hill wrote something about faith that stopped me the first time I read it. He said, faith is a state of mind which may be induced or created by affirmation or repeated instructions to the subconscious mind through the principle of autosuggestion. Read that again in your mind. Faith is not something you either have or you do not. It is a state that can be installed through repeated instruction, through emotionalized words delivered deliberately and consistently to the subconscious mind. Hill was describing a technology, a process. And when I understood that, I realized what the unlock actually is. It is not a new technique. It is not a secret prayer. The unlock is this. Psalm 23 is not a prayer. It is an autosuggestion script, the oldest one ever written. David did not compose poetry. He engineered a program for the subconscious mind. And Hill, without ever naming the psalm, described its exact mechanism 29 centuries later. I need to be honest with you about something before we go any further. There was a period in my life when I had read Think and Grow Rich cover to cover 3 times, and I was still broke. Not because Hill was wrong, because I was reading his words with my intellect and never letting them reach my subconscious. I was studying faith the way you study for an exam, memorizing the principles, underlining the quotes, nodding along, and none of it was penetrating past the surface of my conscious mind. I was performing belief without installing it. The night it changed, I was not reading Hill. I was at the lowest point I had been in years. I had lost a business. I was behind on every bill I had. And I did not pick up Think and Grow Rich that night because I did not need strategy. I needed something older than strategy. I opened the Bible and I read Psalm 23. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. I had read those words 100 times before, but that night I heard them differently. Not as a wish, not as a prayer, as a command from my own mouth to my own subconscious mind. I shall not want. Not a, I hope I will not want. Not maybe one day I will not want. I shall not want. And in that moment, I realized this is what Hill was describing. This is autosuggestion in its purest, most ancient form. David did not write a poem. He wrote a program. And when I began to study Psalm 23 through the framework Hill built, verse by verse, what I found in his principles changed everything for me, because every single line maps to a principle Hill identified, as if David wrote the source code and Hill spent 20 years reverse engineering it. Let us begin where David began. The Lord is my shepherd. I shall not want. Hill's first principle is desire, the starting point of all achievement. But Hill drew a sharp line between desire and wishing. He said most people do not actually desire. They wish, and wishing is contaminated with doubt. Desire, as Hill defined it, is clean, definite, certain. When David said, I shall not want, he was expressing desire in its most absolute form. Desire so complete that lack becomes impossible. Not I want abundance. Not I am trying to attract abundance. I shall not want. Period. That is not a prayer. That is the most aggressive wealth declaration ever recorded, and it is disguised as humility. Now connect this to Hill's second principle, faith. Hill defined faith as the only known antidote for failure, and he said it is induced through repeated instructions to the subconscious mind. Think about that. What is the daily recitation of a psalm, if not repeated instruction to the subconscious mind? What is speaking I shall not want every single morning with genuine emotion, if not autosuggestion, Hill's third principle, operating exactly as he described it. But here is where most people break. They say I shall not want, and then they open their banking app. The number on the screen screams that they do want, that they lack, that the words they just spoke are a lie, and the affirmation collapses. Hill anticipated this. He warned that the conscious mind will resist new programming. He wrote that your ability to use the principle of autosuggestion will depend very largely upon your capacity to concentrate upon a given desire until that desire becomes a burning obsession. He was telling you the evidence of your eyes will contradict the instruction of your mouth. He was telling you the bank account will argue, the bills will argue, your own rational mind will argue, but the subconscious does not respond to evidence. It responds to repetition in emotion. It does not care what your bank balance says. It cares what you say to it, how often, and with how much feeling. Think about Andrew Carnegie for a moment, the richest man of his era. He grew up in crushing poverty in Scotland. His family had nothing. His mother read scripture to him by candlelight in a one-room house. Those words entered his subconscious before he had any evidence that wealth was possible. The programming preceded the proof. The psalm came before the steel empire. Or think about Edwin C. Barnes. This is one of my favorite stories Hill ever told. Barnes was a nobody. No money, no connections, no education that mattered, but he had one thing. An internal state of absolute certainty that he would become the business partner of Thomas Edison. Not work for Edison, partner with Edison. He showed up at Edison's laboratory looking like a tramp. Hill wrote that his appearance said tramp, but his mind said partner. It took years. Edison gave him a small job. Barnes waited. And when the opportunity finally came, Barnes seized it because his subconscious had been programmed with one single instruction for years. Not, I want this. Not, I hope this. This is mine. That is, I shall not want made flesh. And that brings me to something I want you to understand before we go deeper. There is a path worn into the field behind your mind. You did not choose it. You did not design it. But every morning when you wake up, your thoughts walk it automatically. The way your feet follow a trail through grass that has been crossed 10,000 times. The dirt is packed hard. The grass on either side has long since stopped growing, and that trail leads to the same place it has always led. The dread, the tightness, the quiet voice that says, not enough. You did not decide to walk that path. Your subconscious walks it for you because that is what a footpath is. It is the route that repetition made automatic. Psalm 23, recited the way Hill would have you recite it, and is you stepping off that packed trail and putting your foot down in the tall grass where no path exists yet. Hold that image. We are going to come back to it. Now, the next verses. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. Notice what David is doing. He is not making a statement. He is painting a scene. Green pastures, still waters. He is giving his subconscious mind a destination, a picture, a feeling. This is not poetry for the sake of beauty. This is Hill's fifth principle, imagination. The workshop of the mind. Hill said there are two kinds of imagination. Synthetic imagination, which rearranges old ideas, and creative imagination, which receives flashes of insight from a source beyond the conscious mind. He called that source infinite intelligence. Hill wrote that the imagination is the most marvelous, miraculous, inconceivably powerful force the world has ever known. He did not say it is a nice tool. He called it the most powerful force. When David painted green pastures and still waters, he was wielding that force. He was giving his subconscious a world to build toward. When you recite these verses and truly see the green pastures, when you feel the stillness of the water, you are not daydreaming. You are activating creative imagination. You are giving your subconscious a destination so vivid that it begins to organize your actions, your attention, and your decisions around reaching it. And then David writes, He restoreth my soul. In Hill's framework, this is the subconscious mind being reset, cleared, restored to its original setting. Hill wrote in Think and Grow Rich, the subconscious mind will not remain idle. If you fail to plant desires in your subconscious mind, it will feed upon the thoughts which reach it as the result of your neglect. That line haunted me when I first read it, because I realized my subconscious was not empty. It was full of every fear and doubt I had allowed in through years of neglect. He restoreth my soul is not just about adding something new. It is about clearing out what accumulated while you were not paying attention. I will tell you when this verse became real for me. I used to wake up and the first thing I did before my feet hit the floor was run a mental inventory of everything that was wrong. Bills, deadlines, arguments I had not resolved. I was restoring my soul every morning with a catalog of lack. The day I started reciting this verse first, before the inventory could start, something shifted. Not in my bank account, not yet, in the weight. The morning felt different, lighter, and I realized I had been letting the old programming boot up before the new programming had a chance to load. He restoreth my soul is not a one-time event. It is a daily override. He leadeth me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Paths of righteousness. In Hill's language, this is organized planning. His sixth principle, the crystallization of desire into action. But listen to what David is really saying. He is not saying I figured out the right path by myself. He is saying I was led. Hill found this identical pattern in the life of every successful person he studied. He said that when desire, faith, and the subconscious are aligned, a strange thing begins to happen. Opportunities appear that you would swear were not there before. The right conversation, the right idea at 3 a.m, the right person sitting next to you on a train. Hill did not call this luck. He called it infinite intelligence responding to a mind that has finally tuned itself to receive. David called it being led in the paths of righteousness. Different language, same mechanism. Your job is not to find the path. Your job is to align the mind. The path finds you. But the next verse, the one most people think is about death and dying, is actually where Hill spent more ink than almost anywhere else in Think and Grow Rich. Because this verse is about the one force that has destroyed more wealth than every market crash in history combined. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil. For thou art with me. Everyone thinks this verse is about dying. It is not. It is about fear. And fear is the single greatest destroyer of wealth in Napoleon Hill's entire philosophy. In the final chapter of Think and Grow Rich, the chapter most people never finish, Hill identified 6 basic fears that destroy more lives than any economic collapse. The fear of poverty, the fear of criticism, the fear of ill health, the fear of loss of love, the fear of old age, and the fear of death. He called them ghosts. And what did David call the valley? The shadow of death, not death itself, the shadow. Hill said fears are nothing more than states of mind, and one state of mind is subject to control and direction. You know this valley. You have walked through it. The shadow that says, who do you think you are to be wealthy? The shadow that says people like you do not get ahead. The shadow of fear that makes you hesitate on every opportunity, second guess every decision, and shrink back into safety every single time you get close to a breakthrough. In his book, Outwitting the Devil, Hill went even further. He wrote that the devil's greatest tool is not temptation, it is fear. Because fear creates what Hill called drifting. A drifter is someone who has no definite purpose, no burning desire, and no faith. Fear creates drifters. People who float through life reacting instead of directing, settling instead of building. Psalm 23 creates the opposite. It creates someone who walks through the valley without stopping, without settling, without being consumed by the shadow. Remember the footpath. The valley David described is not a place. It is the moment you step off the old trail and the tall grass closes around you and you cannot yet see where the new path leads. That is the valley. That is where fear lives. Not at the beginning of the journey when you are still on the packed dirt of your old thinking, and not at the end when the new trail is firm beneath your feet. Fear lives in the middle. In the grass, in the days when you are reciting the psalm, but your bank account has not changed yet. David did not say he avoided the valley. He said he walked through it. The path to green pastures runs directly through the tall grass where you cannot see 3 steps ahead. Let me tell you about a man who stopped walking. Hill told the story of R.U. Darby and his uncle. They had a gold mine. They were pulling gold out of the ground. And then the vein disappeared. And they drilled and found nothing. The shadow fell. The valley closed in. And Darby's uncle listened to the fear. He sold the equipment to a man for almost nothing. That man hired an engineer, did some calculations, and struck one of the largest gold veins in the region. 3 feet from where Darby's uncle stopped. 3 feet. The physical distance between poverty and wealth was 36 inches. The mental distance was 1 verse of Psalm 23. I will fear no evil. Darby's uncle did not run out of gold. He ran out of that verse. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil. My cup runneth over. A table before your enemies. Not after they are gone. Not once you are safe. In their presence. Hill would call this definiteness of purpose in the face of opposition. Your enemies here are not people. They are your doubts, your debts, your past failures, the voice that told you to be realistic. And David says you sit down and eat in front of all of them. My cup runneth over. This is wealth consciousness at its peak. Not my cup is adequate, not my cup is full. It runs over. Hill taught that wealth is not a fixed quantity that you compete for. The mind that is programmed for abundance does not merely attract enough. It generates overflow. This is not greed. This is the natural state of a mind aligned with what Hill called infinite intelligence. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Shall follow me. Not I will chase goodness and mercy. They follow. Hill's word for this was attraction. When the mind is set, the results pursue you. This final verse is Hill's entire philosophy compressed into one sentence. Align the mind, and wealth follows. Now, let me speak to the part of you that is resisting right now, because I know it is there. It is saying, This is beautiful, but it is just words. Words do not pay bills. Words do not clear debt. Words do not change reality. Hill anticipated this objection. He wrote that thoughts which are mixed with any of the feelings of emotions constitute a magnetic force which attracts other similar or related thoughts. He was not being poetic. He was describing a mechanism. The psalm does not change your bank account directly. It changes your subconscious filter, and your subconscious filter determines what opportunities you see, what risks you take, what actions you sustain, and what you believe you deserve. Change the filter and you change what enters your life. Or maybe you are thinking, I have read Psalm 23 1,000 times and I am still broke. Of course you have, because you read it as comfort. You read it at funerals. You read it when you were sad. You never read it as programming. You never recited it with the deliberate emotional intensity that Hill said is required for autosuggestion to penetrate the subconscious. Reading and mastering are two different things. The title of this video is not Read the Psalm. It is Master the Psalm. How did the old path get there? The one that leads to dread every morning? Did you sit down one day and decide to be anxious about money? Did you choose to flinch every time a bill arrived? No. It was built by repetition. Thousands of mornings. Thousands of small fearful thoughts that your feet followed until the trail was carved so deep you forgot there was ever a field around it. If repetition built the path you are on now, why would you doubt that repetition can build a new one? The mechanism is identical. The only difference is the direction. Now close your eyes for a moment in your mind and imagine 6 months from now. You have recited Psalm 23 every single morning, not as routine, not rushing through it while you brush your teeth. As a deliberate act of programming, your subconscious has shifted. You still check your bank account, but the fog is gone. You notice something different. Opportunities you would have talked yourself out of before now feel possible. Conversations you would have been too afraid to start now feel natural. Decisions come from certainty instead of panic. One morning you will be sitting at your kitchen table, coffee in your hand, and you will realize that you are not anxious, not performing calm, actually not anxious. You will notice it the way you notice silence after a noise you had stopped hearing. And you will understand that the noise was the old path, the dread, the tightness, and it has gone quiet. Not because your problems disappeared overnight, but because your subconscious stopped narrating them as your identity. That morning, you will know Psalm 23 is working, not because of what appeared in your life, but because of what disappeared from your chest. You are still you. Same city, maybe, same challenges. But your internal landscape has changed. The valley is still there. It never disappears entirely. But you walk through it now. You do not stop. You do not pitch a tent in the shadow and call it home. Hill wrote, "Whatever the mind of man can conceive and believe, it can achieve." You have heard that 1,000 times. But now you understand the mechanism. Conceive, that is imagination. The green pastures, the still waters. Believe, that is faith. Installed through repetition and emotion. Achieve, that is the cup running over. Here's what I'm asking you to do. Not tomorrow, tonight, before you sleep. Find a quiet place, no phone, no distractions. Read Psalm 23 aloud. Slowly, one verse at a time. After each verse, close your eyes and see what David described. Green pastures, still waters. The table set before your enemies. The cup overflowing. As you speak, I shall not want. Feel it as a command to your subconscious mind, not a wish. A command. Do this for 21 consecutive days. Hill wrote that the subconscious requires repetition to accept new instructions. 21 days is the minimum threshold for a new pattern to take root in the mind. Hill said desire is the starting point of all achievement, not a hope, not a wish, but a keen pulsating desire which transcends everything. This practice will test whether your desire for change is a wish or a pulse. Tonight, when you recite Psalm 23 for the first time using this method, I want you to understand what you are actually doing. You are not praying. You are not hoping. You are putting your foot down in tall grass. It will feel strange. The grass will resist. Your mind will try to pull you back to the old trail. That is not failure. That is the feeling of a new path being born. Walk it again tomorrow and the day after that. 21 days. That is all it takes for the grass to start bending beneath your feet. I want to speak to you directly for a moment, not to everyone listening, to you. You did not find this video by accident. You clicked because something inside you, something deeper than curiosity, recognized the promise. A psalm that unlocks wealth. Part of you already knew it was true before I said a single word, because you have felt the power of those verses before. You just did not have the framework to use them. Hill believed that infinite intelligence guides those who are ready to receive. If that is true, and I believe it is, then this moment is not a coincidence. It is a response. Remember the person at the start of this video? The one whispering affirmations that felt hollow. The one checking their bank account with dread. That person now holds something they did not hold 25 minutes ago. Not just information, a practice. A psalm that has survived 3,000 years because it works, and a framework from a man who spent a lifetime proving why. You have been walking the same path for years, maybe decades, and tonight, for the first time, you have a reason to step off it. Not a vague hope, not a motivational quote, a practice. 6 verses, a method, and 21 days to wear a new trail through the field of your own mind. The old path will still be there tomorrow morning. It will call to you. Your feet will want to follow it because that is what feet do. They follow what is familiar. But you will have 4 words that David gave you 3,000 years ago. 4 words that Hill spent a lifetime proving. I shall not want. Step into the grass. Walk the new path and trust that the grass knows how to bend.